properties of a solid and the viscous properties of a liquid. So look at that. And another thing to think about, that's exceeding the Rayleigh length for the stability of a liquid column, but that's another story. But look, see, you've got this liquid rubber band, and you can observe these properties of a viscoelastic fluid simply because you're in this weightless environment. Really cool stuff. Okay, this is another little demonstration, and I brought some knitting needles with me. You have a small amount of personal stuff that you can fly into space. And I thought, well, I'm going to bring some knitting needles. And I was bringing the knitting needles not because I thought we'd have so much spare time I could catch up on my knitting. I brought the knitting needles because I thought there'd be some cool experiments you could do with them. And I cheated because this particular knitting needle is made out of Teflon. And then I had a knitting needle that I made out of nylon. And a knitting needle that I made out of polymethyl methacrylate. Say that really fast 3 times in a row. And then a knitting needle made out of polyethylene. Or I should say polypropylene. Okay. So I've got these 4 knitting needles. Now, can anyone think of why I would bring these knitting needles and why I happened to choose these goofy materials to make them out of?
Because it's texture. How well?
Surface texture that's getting to the point of tribocharging series. So this is something that you can demonstrate in middle school or high school series classes, tribocharging series. And for example, nylon becomes positive charged when you rub it with cat fur. And Teflon and polymethyl methacrylate become negatively charged, and so does polypropylene. So you can, by simply rubbing these knitting needles with your cat fur, and again, this is like a Benjamin Franklin experiment, right? You can invoke positive or negative charge, and you can invoke a really great negative charge like rubbing Teflon, or a lesser negative charge like if you rub polymethyl methacrylate. And so there should be a whole bunch of charge demonstrations that you can do because static charge is relatively weak force compared to gravity. And so I thought, well, let me bring my knitting needles and I'll rub them with cat fur. And
Did you bring cat fur?
And I'll get to whether I rub. And so I'll rub them with cat fur equivalent, and see what I could observe with the charge forces without gravitational forces to complicate the behavior. So I had these in my personal kit. Now all I need to do is to get some cat fur. And I thought, well, gosh, maybe there's some bio experiments that need cats. But then I thought, well, even if we did have a cat on board, which we don't, I'm not sure the cat would like being rubbed against my knitting needle. So I did the next best thing. I relied on our international partner, the Russians. And they have an assortment of clothing that you can choose. And one of the pieces of clothing you can choose are Russian fur boots. And so I chose the Russian fur boots not because I tend to get cold feet, but because I wanted the fur so I could rub against my knitting needles. And I did not ask what kind of fur are in the Russian fur boots. But anyway, so I have my Russian fur boots. I can rub my knitting needles and statically charge them. And then I'm going to squirt little drops of water out. And by virtue of squirting a drop of water out an insulating nozzle like a Teflon cannula, you can put a charge on it, and then you got a charge on the knitting needle, and now you can look at the balance between the kinetic energy of the drops and the charge forces involved. So let's watch this. So there's fur boot, it's charged. Now, look at the drops. Whoa, isn't that cool? Now we understand exactly what's going on here. It's simply charged droplets orbiting around a cylindrical shaped planet, right? Not due to gravity, but due to charge. So everything here is understood, but we can't see this down here. But you can see see it in a weightless environment because the charge forces are small, gravitational forces have been removed, and now we can demonstrate things that make students and teachers go, wow, isn't that cool? I mean, you could use this to incite a whole bunch of students into taking math and science and everything cool instead of going in, liberal arts and business.